Okay, good evening and welcome everyone. Welcome to the Torah studies for the new year, Tafshin Pei Hey. And this year we are actually starting a different curriculum, a different thing. The Torah studies will be focusing on the Rebbe's teachings, on the Rashi commentaries. The Rashi commentaries of the Torah. And as I was asked, why Rashi? There's so many commentaries on the Torah. And so we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about who Rashi is and why his commentary is so unique. Rashi is Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, Rabbi Shlomo, the son of Yitzchak. And he lived in south of France in the latter part of the 11th century. He was a renowned Torah scholar that he wrote the commentary on the Torah, on the Talmud. And this comprehensive commentary on the Torah is a commentary that was adopted by scholars in all walks of life throughout the generations. Even in his days, with the sages then that recognized Rashi's commentary as something very, very unique. And throughout the years, there were also many super commentators that commented on Rashi. And there are probably, I would say, over 300 commentators. And they had different approaches, different ways of understanding Rashi. And it was, Rashi's commentary was highly popular, as we said, even in his time. The greatest Jewish scholars refer to him as the luminary of the diaspora. Let's look at some of his contemporaries, what they wrote about Rashi. We begin with the Ibn Ezra. The Ibn Ezra, Rabbi Avraham Ibn Ezra, he was he lived in the he was actually a teenager when Rashi passed away. So let's look inside. So he writes as follows: Koichav dorach mitzarfasa. He writes, a star has gone from France, a community established on firm foundations. An awe-inspiring commentary he penned. His sobriquet, his nickname, exponent of faith. Al-Kei Nikra Parshan Dasa, that's what he calls it. The exponent of faith. His is a book of redemption for all who question, pleasing to the nation Israel. So this is the Ibn Ezra. Approximately 100 years later, after Rashi, there was the Nachmanides, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman. And he penned a widely acclaimed commentary on the Torah. So in the introduction to his commentary, he wrote the following. He writes, the Nachmanides, I will place as illumination before me the lights of the pure candelabra, the commentaries of Rabbi Shlomo, a crown of glory and a diadem of beauty. To him go the rights of the firstborn. I will study his words with soaring love. And about 50 years later, there is another commentator, the Meiri. The Meiri, Rabbi Menachem Meiri, he lived from 1249 till 1310. And he writes, chief among all commentators is Rashi, of blessed memory. If his attackers are numerous, he is equipped to defend, parrying with sword, succinct and wise. Only select thinkers discern his greatness, deflecting bundles of questions with but a word. In one word, in other words, it says he can answer bundles of questions in one word. And as I said, over the years, more than 300 super commentaries were written on Rashi's words, each attempting to decode his teachings and to find out the approach, to give us understanding of the approach of Rashi. So their willingness to devote pages of commentary to a single word of Rashi, this shows the high esteem in which he is held. Like the Shiloh HaKadosh, Rabbi Yeshayahu Levi Horowitz, he writes about Rashi's commentary. He said, that Rashi wrote his commentary with divine inspiration. And we find it by many commentators who write about Rashi, like the Lavush, Rabbi Mordechai Yaffe. He writes, Ani omer ki vaday divrei Rashi em divrei Elokeim Chaim. He says, I say that certainly the words of Rashi are the words of the living God. And we find it by many. What is interesting, there's also something that Rashi himself wrote in his commentary in Ezekiel, chapter 42, verse 3. He writes a very rare expression. He writes, Ani lo hayali rav, lo hayali lo rav velo ozer b'chol habinyan hazeh, ela kemo she'iruni min hashamayim. He said, I had no teacher and no helper in all of this building except the way they showed me from heaven. So we find that Rashi himself points out about the divine inspiration, the divine guidance that Rashi had, writing the commentary on the Torah. You know, Rashi had also great children, the grandchildren that wrote commentary in the Talmud and so on. And one of his grandchildren was known as the Rabbeinu Tam, and he wrote what my grandfather wrote the commentary on the Talmud, that I can do myself also. But to write the commentary that he did on the Torah and the Mikra, the written law, that is not in my power to do. So it gives us a little bit appreciation of why Rashi. Why is the focus on Rashi so much? Here's also from the Chida, Rabbi Chaim Yosef David Azulai, Hashem Agdalim. And he writes that he was extremely precise with his words, hinting at multiple teachings with the change of a single letter. And that's why our sages really analyze Rashi's teaching so carefully. And throughout the years, as we said, there were many commentators that commented and explained the Rashi. And we will focus this year on the Rashis, on the Torah. And throughout the year, we will examine many thoughts from Rashi's super commentators. And let's just introduce a few of the basic ones that will come up frequently in our discussions. We have Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi. Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi is known as the acronym the Re'ain. We have Rabbi Yehuda Lau. I'm sure you heard of Rabbi Yehuda Lau. He is the Maharal of Prague. He wrote the commentary Gur Aryeh. And Rabbi David Prado, the Maskil David, Rabbi Mordechai Yafi de Lavush, Hara, Rabbi Shab Sebas, the Sifsi Chachamim. This is just about a few of the main ones of the super commentators and Rashi, which we will focus on throughout the year. Now, we want to establish the groundwork for the analysis and discussion on Rashi. When all of these commentators, they try to comment and explain Rashi, what are they trying to elicit? And after all, they wrote so many thousands of pages on all of these comments of Rashi. So in the Torah, we know there are the four dimensions, basic dimensions to understand the Torah. In the words of the Zohar, it says, "Beiraisa pshatim rayes drashas soides, ule'ele sisris torim l'Hashem." The Torah can be understood on four levels: the plain understanding, the allegorical understanding, the homiletical understanding, and the mystical understanding. This makes the word pardes. Pardes means the orchard. Pardes Torah, the orchard of the Torah. Pshat, Remez, Drush, and so on. He says Pshat and Rayas. So Pshat means the literal understanding. Remez, the allegorical understanding. Sometimes it's like, for example, when you have words that have a numerical value, a gematria, and so on. This is an allegorical understanding. And you have the drash. The drash is homiletical. It is there's different meanings. There's also from the Medrash, talks about different things that are not literal. There's also comparing verses in the Torah to darshan, to teach from one from another. Then you have the mystics, the mystical part of the Torah. But beyond these are secret upon secret known only to God. So the Torah really is endless. The Torah is endless. And here we want to ask the question, what is it that Rashi comes to explain? What is Rashi here about? If we understood Rashi as the great commentator was writing his commentary with divine guidance and so on, and so many commentators explain and elaborate of what Rashi is explaining. So what level of the Torah is Rashi about to explain? Explaining the Torah. So there is a Rashi. There's a Rashi in Genesis, chapter 3, verse 8. Rashi writes as follows, which really gives us a clue of understanding what way is Rashi going to explain the Torah. So it says there are many agadic, non-legalistic explanations in the Medrash. These were arranged by our sages in proper order in the Medrash, Bereshis, Rabbah, and other Midrashic texts. So many commentators, many agadic, non-legalistic explanations. I, however, have come only to teach the plain meaning of the text. And I will also use such agadic text that clarify the plain meaning of the biblical text, each word in its proper way. So Rashi wrote his commentary to help us understand the text in the simplest context. However, if you read in the last line of this text, you will note that Rashi declares his intention to make use of the midrashic explanation. That there is also the midrashic explanation that will also help us understand the simple explanation. And this really confuses many of Rashi's readers. When you go through the Torah, and you see many times Rashi quotes from the Medrash about certain and explaining certain events in the Torah, he brings different Midrashim that seem to be not the literal meaning, and that could confuse the people. The reader can get confused. What is it? And as we'll soon see, the Rebbe explains that Rashi is using them only to clarify the simple understanding. There is here Rabbi Tuvi Bloy, he's a chassid in Yerushalayim. I knew him, I grew up with him. And he wrote a book called Kloli Rashi, The Rules of Rashi, and that is based on the Rebbe's teachings of Rashi. And he brings out that there were different approaches by different commentators who understood Rashi in different ways. And he writes, with respect to this question, we find multiple approaches among the super commentators of Rashi. So he brings one approach. One answer is Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi. For example, he thought that Rashi makes use of homiletic interpretation wherever possible. So wherever is possible to explain it also in homiletic explanation, he does that. And on the other hand, in his introduction to Maskele David, Rabbi David Prado, one of the great commentators, super commentators on Rashi, he disagrees. And he wrote, our teacher only made use of homily when absolutely necessary, meaning when the literal translation failed to satisfy. So in other words, when you have verses in the Torah that you cannot understand them literally, that's when Rashi uses the homily, the drush, explaining like the medrash. On the other side of the spectrum, we find the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer Ashkenazi, the author of Sefer Zikaron, in his super commentary to Exodus 13:17, and he wrote that Rashi chooses homiletic interpretations over the obvious and plain meaning of the text. He stated even more clearly, Rashi neglects the literal meaning of most biblical passages and relies instead on the homiletic interpretations of our sages of blessed memory. When he wrote on several occasions, I have only come to reconcile the plain meaning of the text, he referred only to the specific passages under discussion, not to the entire Torah. So this Rabbi Eliezer Ashkenazi has a whole different approach. He says Rashi really is not about simple understanding. He says Rashi really tries to bring the midrashic explanation. And when Rashi wrote that I only come to explain the simple meaning, that is only referred to those verses where he wrote them. That's what Rabbi Ashkenazi says. Now, the Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe, disagrees. He disagrees with all of them. He disagrees with all these attempts to phrase Rashi's words and he disagrees with the attempt to parse Rashi's words, meaning when Rashi says that I have come to teach the Torah to the simple understanding, pshuta shel mikra, the simple literal meaning, he means it. And that is true to the entire Torah. So the Rebbe emphasized that the words only, it says, Ani lo basi elo lefarish pshuta shel mikra. I have not come only to clarify the simple meaning. So this is that Rashi aims to teach the Torah in the most basic way possible. So Rashi never aims for mystical insight or homiletical teachings. Rashi wants us to grasp the simple meaning. And when we're talking about the simple meaning, the Rebbe often quoted what it says in the Mishnah. Who is the one who first studies the Mishnah, the teaching the Torah? It says the Mishnah in Avos, ben chamesh shonim lemikra. Okay, so unlike other commentators in Rashi, the Rebbe took Rashi's words at face value, and Rashi's primary goal is to teach the Torah to the most basic way, in the most basic way possible. And here in the Mishnah says, in the Avot, it says, Ben chamesh shonim lemikra. At the age of 5, one studies Torah. The age of 10, one studies Mishnah. The age of 13, one studies Zablagir and Mitzvahs. The age of 15, one studies the Talmud. So when Rashi is explaining the Torah, says the Rebbe, he's explaining this to the 5-year-old. The 5-year-old doesn't know any chachmas. He doesn't know any tricks. He's not familiar with all the deep understandings of the halacha and the medrash. The 5-year-old reads the verses in the Torah and he wants to understand the basic. What does it mean? And sometimes he looks at a verse and he doesn't understand. He has a question. Sometimes there is what is called a klotz kasha. A klotz is like a log. There's a question like a log. Like is where do we go from here? And we need to answer this. The Rebbe used this many times and explaining how Rashi really deals with the Ben Chamesh Lamika, with the 5-year-old. So Rashi only addresses questions that would bother a 5-year-old who is learning the Torah for the first time. So obviously, we're talking about a smart 5-year-old, but a 5-year-old nevertheless. So here's a quote from the Rebbe's teaching. It says, "This is one of the talks in 1984 when the Rebbe was talking about a certain Rashi. At one point, the Rebbe was suggesting people to ask questions and to find answers to questions that he asked. And sometimes they would come up with the answers they would give to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe wouldn't accept it. The answer may be smart, may be brilliant. He says, but this is not a simple understanding for the 5-year-old. The Rebbe says that if you want to understand Rashi, you have to understand it like a 5-year-old. Simple understanding. If there is a question that bothers, Rashi should ask the question. If Rashi doesn't ask the question, that means that there is no question to the 5-year-old. So the Rebbe said that as follows: the explanation of Rashi for Rashi's comments was debated in several publications. They made certain publications then to give the Rebbe's answers to the Rebbe's questions and so on. It says, and several answers were offered. However, each answer took up, on average, a page and a half. They cited many teachings from our sages of blessed memory, from other commentaries. They even cited certain pages and footnotes from my teachings in Likutei Sichos, says the Rebbe. However, we must remember that these explanations are presented to 5-year-olds who wonder why we pester them with lengthy lectures. They want a simple and quick explanation of Rashi so that they can go and play. Engaging in lengthy explanations with citations from Hebrew text, especially text written without vowels, is off the mark. So suggestions to the Rebbe's questions, the Rebbe did not accept those kind of answers that were involved with deep explanations. And the Rebbe says, I need a simple understanding that the 5-year-old will accept. The Rebbe goes on, a different sikha. It says, Rashi wrote his commentary in a manner that his teachings are obvious from a plain reading of the biblical text. Rashi does not rely on the super commentaries of Sifsei Chachamim, Rabbi Mizrahi, or others to explain his meaning. These commentaries were written hundreds of years after Rashi wrote his commentary. When Rashi taught his students, they understood him without the aid of these commentaries. Okay? So therefore, we too should be able to understand Rashi by pursuing the plain meaning of the biblical text. Not only did the Rebbe insist that Rashi can be understood without the aid of the super commentaries, but he also often rejected their approach. He felt that the super commentaries were aiming too high when explaining Rashi. Now, of course, we have to understand that their explanation doesn't mean that it's not true. Their explanation may be true, but that is not the simple understanding, the simple explanation, the way the Rebbe understood that Rashi is trying to convey. So Rashi wrote to a 5-year-old, this means that the children must be able to understand Rashi's meaning without resorting to sophisticated explanations that are beyond the knowledge of most 5-year-olds. So if the 5-year-old can't understand it, it is therefore not what Rashi meant. And so the Rebbe continues there. The super commentaries on Rashi primarily explain Rashi in the manner of halacha, allegory, homily, or mysticism. With respect to the latter, it is primarily the commentary Rabbi Yehuda Leib Lau, the Maharal of Prague, the author of Gur Aryeh, who often explained Rashi according to the mystical tradition. So again, there is those things also in Rashi, as we'll soon see. But this is only after we have the very basic understanding for the 5-year-old to understand. But if according to the Rebbe, Rashi only intends to teach the plain meaning of the text, why does Rashi cite the Medrash frequently? If you learn the Rashi, frequently the Rashi cites the Medrash. And again, Medrash is not the literal understanding. And the Rebbe explains, according to the Rebbe, Rashi's frequent citation of the Medrash are integral to understanding the plain meaning of the text. The Rebbe extensively explored many such anomalies in Rashi's interpretations. So, most of you are familiar with what it means, a Farbrengen, right? We get together and we say stories, talk the words of Torah, we sing. And of course, we had Farbrengens with the Rebbe. With the Rebbe's Farbrengens throughout the years. The Rebbe would gather with the Hasidim together in 770. And the Rebbe would teach. Between the talks, they would have singing. They would raise a cup of wine and say l'chaim to the Rebbe. And the Farbrengen usually follow the basic pattern. The Rebbe would speak a few talks. Mainly, it would be the first 1 or 2 talks. It would be about the significance of the day that we gathered on. And then the Rebbe would sing, and then the Rebbe would say a Hasidic discourse, more deeper teachings in Torah. And then the Rebbe would speak in about all kinds of matters, issues, the current events and things that the Rebbe would address. And in 1964, the Rebbe's mother passed away. Rebbe Tzimchana, as you see here in the picture. And she came to America after escaping Russia. She came in 1947, she came to America. And she settled in Crown Heights, lived next to the Rebbe, the Rebbetzin. And she passed away, I think it was on Shabbos, the 6th day of Tishrei. And it's 60 years ago, exactly, 60 years ago. And this was right after Rosh Hashanah. And after this, at the end of that month, the Parsha, after the holidays, the Rebbe started teaching Rashi. The Rebbe started teaching the Rashi, learning in addition to the other parts of the Farbrengen. The Rebbe literally opened the Chumash and Rashi, started teaching the people the Rashi. And we'll read it from a description from an article in the Hasidische De'er. This is the Rebbe arrived at his place. Instead of starting his Sikha, as soon as he sat down, as he usually did, the Rebbe requested that a copy of the Pentateuch, that should be brought to him. The Rebbe should request a book during a Farbrengen. That was extremely rare. The Rebbe, by the way, Farbrengen went on for hours and hours and hours. The Rebbe never had any books in front of him, any notes. He was speaking for hours and upon hours without any notes. But here, in this case, the Rebbe asked to bring a Chumash, and he was reading. The Chumash was brought. It was, it was the first indication that something unusual was underway. The Chumash was brought, and the Rebbe opened it to Parshas NOACH and began reading and translating the first passage. He then moved on to Rashi, reading and translating the second Rashi on the Parsha. It was a beautiful scene, hundreds of Hasidim crowding around the Rebbe, as the Rebbe sat and taught Rashi like a teacher in the cheder, in school. First translating, and then proceeding to ask several penetrating questions, cutting to the very heart of Rashi's words. No one realized it at a time, but this was a historic moment. The Rebbe had just quietly, without much fanfare, launched a revolution that would accompany every Shabbos Farbrengen for the next 23 years and would change the way we look at Rashi. So for the next 23 years, the Rebbe was teaching the Rashi, the Chumash and the Rashi, asking questions. What does Rashi mean? What bothered Rashi when he gives a commentary? Obviously something bothers him. Certain verses in the Torah doesn't have Rashi's commentary because it's understood to the 5-year-old. So when Rashi does bring an explanation, that means that something is not understood. Something bothered him. 1 second. And as the years went on, the Rebbe also, as I said before, the Rebbe would ask questions and leave and give the people to think about the questions. People would write answers, suggest answers. The Rebbe would also encourage the people to ask questions, and sometimes during the Farbrengen, the Rebbe would take questions that people wrote, people asked, and he would talk about those questions. And although, as we said, what the Rebbe's approach is that Rashi talks about a very simple understanding, simple meaning to the 5-year-old. Nevertheless, the Rebbe says that in Rashi, there is also to be found wonders of Rashi. There is the secrets and mystics that is hidden in the words of Rashi as well. Because as the Rebbe said, although the Torah, as we said before, there's the 4 levels of the Torah, but really they all come from one source and one core, and they are all intertwined, they all come together. So it's not like the 4 separate understanding. The Rebbe's view in the 4 categories of understanding of Torah is not as separate fields, but entwined aspects of one unified whole. As the Rebbe said, I've explained many times that our Torah, that our holy Torah, is a single Torah. The inner dimensions of the Torah and the halachic dimensions of the Torah are all one, like a body and soul. So this means that all the sections of the Torah fit together like multiple parts of a single branch. And here's also from the Shiloh HaKadosh says about Rashi, Rabbi Yeshayahu Levi Horowitz. It says there are hidden wonders, the hidden wondrous teachings in every word of Rashi. It says, peruse Rashi's comments on the Torah, and at face value you might think it is light reading, but look and you will find wonders. And as the Alter Rebbe said, that in the Rashi there is also he calls it the wine of the Torah. The Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman of Liadi, he once said that Rashi's commentary on the Torah is the wine of the Torah. It opens the heart, bringing to the surface our inherent love and awe of God. So this is also something you can look forward this year, to see the Rebbe's understanding, the beautiful explanations on simple questions in the Torah. And in the same time, the Rebbe says there is also the wine of the Torah in the Rashi. There is the what we can take out from the Rashi. Every word in Rashi, says Rabbi Mordechai Yaffe, the Lavush, it says every word in Rashi's commentary contains a revealed understanding and a concealed strata. Both are true. It's the Rebbe's words. It says, although Rashi's commentary on the Torah explains the plain meaning of a text, it also contains wondrous teachings from other sections of the Torah, including the mystical mysteries of the Torah. As the Alter Rebbe famously said, Rashi's commentary on the Torah is wine of the Torah. However, to dig through to the wondrous teachings and the wine of the Torah, we must first study the plain meaning of Rashi's commentary, because Rashi embedded the wondrous teaching and the wine of the Torah into the plain meaning of the Torah text. So this is we didn't touch about anything of this week's Torah portion, as of course, as obviously as you saw, time does not allow it for this week. But starting Mitzvah Shem from next week, we'll be focusing on different meanings, different parts in the Torah. We'll analyze it the way Rashi explains it, and what is the lesson we'll take out from this. So here's the principles of Rashi that we came to conclude to speak about. Rashi speaks to the 5-year-old student and explains the text in the plainest possible way, in a way children can understand. Number 2, Rashi does not present questions. He explains the passage, and the questions fall away. We must therefore always determine precisely which question Rashi was addressing. As I said before, if there's no question in the verse, Rashi doesn't give any comments. Number 3, Rashi only offers 2 explanations. Sometimes he offers more than one explanation. So he offers 2 explanations only when neither captures the plain meaning of the text fully. However, the 2 always complement each other. In such instances, the explanation that is presented first is smoother and more conducive to the plain meaning. That's also one of the Rebbe's guidance. The Rebbe rules after guided us how to understand the rules of Rashi. Number 4, Rashi does not usually cite the source of his teachings. He only cites the source or the name of the person he is quoting to answer a question a student might ask. That's also an interesting fact. Rashi brings commentaries, and he doesn't say where it's coming from. when he does mention the source of it, it is because it is important to mention the source, because that helps us understand the question. Okay? If he cites the name of a source, we must ask which question Rashi is attempting to answer. So those rules are things which are important to remember, because they will help us in the future lessons. Obviously, when we'll get there, we'll review those rules again. Additional principles. Rashi's words are precise. Every word contributes to our understanding of the text. If a word appears superfluous, we must ask why it was included. Number two, Rashi begins each comment with a header comprised of the words from the passage he intends to address. These headers are precise. They include every word Rashi addresses. Never more, never less. When unnecessary words appear in the header, or when words appear to be missing, there is a reason. Okay? So again, what is a header? Rashi usually, when he gives a commentary to the Torah, he quotes a few words from the verse, and then he writes his commentary. So the words that he quotes as the header, those are precise. Sometimes he quotes different words, and the Rebbe gives a whole explanation why he chose these words to explain this header. Number three, Rashi only addresses questions that arise in the mind of a 5-year-old. On the other hand, Rashi addresses every question a 5-year-old might ask. If you think of a question that Rashi did not ask, it is either not a question or was already answered. And number four, Rashi teaches in the order that the child studies. Rashi, therefore, does not ask questions on the passages or rely on sources that the child has yet to study. On the other hand, Rashi expects the child to remember everything taught up to that point. So those are some of the rules. There are much more rules. We'll come across, we'll explain as we go along, Bezrat Hashem, this year, the learning of the Torah studies. And we shall see you, Bezrat Hashem, next week. Next week, God willing, we'll be able to go into these teachings in depth. So I let the mic open today, and apparently everything was clear. Because if anyone has questions, you may ask.
Rabbi, I have a question. You said that in Rashi's commentary, more or less something basic for a child. Now, is there also kind of intended deeper meaning that once you start interpreting, just some of the comments are like pretty short and up to the point, but as you're reading it, as you're trying to understand it, you should be looking for a deeper meaning, right? Deeper than what the words are saying on a page. Is that correct?
Yeah, but again, that's not what Rashi is about. Rashi is not about looking for the other meanings, which sometimes he does, and sometimes if those deeper meanings are part of connected to the simple meaning, Rashi alludes to them, and as we said before, there's the wine of the Torah in Rashi that alludes, but this is all in a in the way if it's within the simple understanding, related to the simple understanding.